What if you could predict human behavior before it happens? Not guess, not approximate, but predict. What if the systems we have built to develop, protect, and optimize human beings, military fitness standards, corporate performance metrics, first responder protocols, were never designed with half the population in mind? And what if the cost of that error isn't measured in metrics, but in lives? My guest today has spent her career doing what few are willing to do, taking rigorous behavioral science into the systems that need it most and telling the truth about what is found, even when that truth may be inconvenient, expensive, or uncomfortable. She has studied human behavior in extremis. She works with generals, athletes, first responders, and founders, and has well-published research on how female service members pay a metabolic cost that male standards may never account for. She has proven that our perception of individuals shift depending on the ground around them, which I've learned during our intake calls. She has mapped what resources human beings actually need to thrive, not just survive, and where organizations assume responsibility, accountability, and what is needed. She told me something during our intake call that I haven't been able to shake yet, and that is, quote, every thought is an afterthought, end quote. That the version of free will that we cling to is not a thing, that Harrow's monkeys are real, meaning the damage done by systems that strip human beings of contact, comfort, and connection is not theoretical. It is science, and it is biological. It is measurable. And it's happening right now inside of organizations we trust with our most important people. This is the Fight or Flight podcast. I am Myles and Dr. Valerie Starratt. It's great to have you with us. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
How was that intro? Did I do us justice?
I'm always interested in how people explain me because I learn something new about myself every time.
Did I do it right? Did I get any mistakes in there?
Yeah, it's all
more or less.
It's all more or less there.
Scientist, academic, all around great person, ethical human being.
Oof.
I appreciate you.
I'll try to live up to it.
And you have. I could spend more time in our intake call than our actual recording, so I appreciate that. I like to start every conversation the same way. It's a 3-part question that I believe reveals more about a person than any resume, bio, or LinkedIn profile will. Dr. Starratt, who are you? Who have you been? And who are you becoming?
I have no idea.
I love it. I think you do more than most of us.
Let's see. So I think first and foremost, I am a scientist. That is, I think one of my primary identities. It means a lot to me to be a scientist. It kind of explains who I am. It's just kind of how I approach the world, how I perceive things. I spent the vast majority, almost the entirety of my adult life in academia. So I was, until very recently, a professor in a department of psychology and neuroscience. That's where I really thought I would spend the entirety of my adult life until, as we discussed, I rage quit one day. And now I am out here in the real world trying to figure out how to bring what I know from the science world into the real world. And where I'm going, you know as much as I do. I have no idea, day by day at this point.
Well, where you're going is going to be amazing, and I can't wait to follow you there, both as a curious one and hopefully a student of whatever it is that you're discovering or applying yourself, because I know it's going to be epic. Science, what specifically is your specialty? What is it that you've really elevated that defines your greatest moments?
I am somewhere in the world of biology and psychology. That's where I really am. My degree, I had the great fortune to working with one of the most impressive scientists ever. My advisor when I was in graduate school was Todd Shackelford, and he was just an amazing evolutionary psychologist. And so that's really where my work is in evolutionary psychology, which really just means we apply the principles of evolutionary biology to the study of human cognition and behavior. So humans think and behave the way that we do because humans evolved to be this way. And sort of looking at the evolutionary process, just like we evolved to have, like, two hands, two arms, two eyes, one nose, that kind of thing. We evolved to have certain neurological processes that motivate certain behaviors for certain purposes, things like that. My particular area of specialization has been what we call sexual conflict in humans. So the way I think about it is looking at, like, the long reach of reproductive biology. So what is it that makes males males and females females, like across species? So looking at why are some members of a species male, why are other members of a species female? Looking at those basic differences in reproductive biology, and then seeing how those basic biological differences affect cognition, behavior. I mean, even sort of like you were talking about, up to sort of system wide behavior.
That's remarkable. I'm quite curious. How does evolutionary psychology apply to athletes, the military, and business?
I mean, they're all behaviors. I think that's the thing. That's one of my favorite things about that field, is that it's not a field of study in and of itself. It's a perspective that you can take and apply it to anything. So a behavior is a behavior is a behavior. And humans are humans. So you put humans in a home environment, you put humans on an NFL football field, you put humans in a boardroom, they're still humans. They still have the same neurological behavioral architecture in any of those circumstances. And so, really, once you start understanding why humans behave the way that they do, you can apply it to any behavior in any circumstance. I always would laugh with my students about it. Being an evolutionary psychologist is just like being a giant 3-year-old. You just ask, but why, over and over and over again. Like, but why? But why, but why, but why? And that's
And it,
why I like this field, because you actually get to an answer of why.
so to follow that up, the why, that curiosity, gives you the advantage of having a perspective that's deeply studied. Does that then allow you to influence the outcome of behavior?
You can.
Okay.
The
So,
the better we understand something, the more opportunity we have to be able to affect that behavior.
and when we say affect, is that is predict what the behavior is going to be or project what will happen?
We can predict, but also affect. So
Okay.
we can predict a behavior, but potentially if it's a negative behavior, something we want to change, then if we understand why people do that, we'll be in a better position to be able to maybe make it less likely that they'll do that.
Great. I want to come back to that. Let's put a pin in that and go forward. What are the things that influence, or what are the most overarching influencers that affect behavior, human behavior?
Um, Thing number one really is genetics. It's,
Okay.
biology. Yeah. So you've got, people are born with whatever genes they're born with, and then those genes get expressed depending on the environment. And when I say environment, I mean everything from, like, intrauterine environment. So, like, you've got conception, and then you've got, like, even just in utero, all of the chemicals and stuff that are happening in there. That's all part of environment. And then once you're born, all the environment, everything around you, all the input that you get from everywhere, even your own output, your own behavior becomes part of your environment. So all of that. So you've got your genetics, and then all the environment that you're in. Those are big predictors of behavior.
And the stimulus, can you introduce circumstances or create conditions that will override the genetics and create outcomes that would be more in keeping with whatever one's agenda is?
Yes, ish. The biology sets the constraints, sets the boundaries.
For example,
And For example, I am 5'3".
Okay.
Based on my genetics, I would be guaranteed to be between what height and what height, maybe like
Okay.
5 foot and 5'6", whatever. And then everything else that happens to me determines where in that range I fall. Nothing you could do to me would make me 6 feet tall.
Right.
And so the same thing is true of behavior. Sort of, we have a behavioral range that is set by what we're capable of, and what we're likely to do or unlikely to do. And then everything else that happens, stimulus, all that input, all that environment, both now and historically, and what might happen in the future, all of that determines where in that range will fall.
Okay. So based on that, and this may be an overgeneralization, do you believe nature or nurture is a more influential stimulus to an individual's behavior?
You cannot consider one without the other. They have, the two influences occur in concert with each other.
Always?
Always.
So I can't take an individual, put them in extreme stress, whether it's a operator, and change the behavior. I can't push that individual's nature to be more aggressive or be more passive or be more alert.
You can, but the environment that you put them in is going to interact with the biology that they have. And so it can't be just a one-way thing. Because think about it, take two spec ops, right? So if you take
Yep.
two special operators, put them in the exact same environment, you're not going to get the exact same behavior. Even if you make the exact same stimulus, you give them the exact same input, you're going to get slightly different responses. One might be a little faster than the other, one might be a little more aggressive than the other, whatever it is, but they're not going to be identical because
Correct.
it's going to interact with whoever they are, both biologically and the environment that they found themselves in up until that point.
Okay. So to follow that up, because we spoke about rewards and incentives
Mhm.
earlier as a strong indicator of someone's behavior or reason for behaving in a certain way. Can the reward and incentive override the genetics or the nurture, that component of it? And I'm asking this because I'm curious, both not just from a military, but from an org behavior, from a corporate perspective. Can you influence someone with a bigger bonus? Can you influence someone with a bigger office? Can you influence someone with different notoriety? And I'm just curious because many of us work in what we perceive to be fixed systems. And I'm curious if the behavioral science can create conditions of excellence or conditions for failure.
So, yeah, I mean, of course, you offer me a bigger bonus, you will absolutely change my behavior. Um, but
Absolutely.
but the extent to which your bonus influences me is based on a lot of things. Um, Also, maybe money doesn't mean as much to me as it would
Correct.
to somebody working next to me. So maybe you can offer me money and it'll work. Maybe you offer somebody else notoriety and it'll work. So, and that's part of why I think what we do is so valuable is that your question is completely legitimate. And it's one that you probably hear a lot of people asking, like in a world you're familiar with. But in my world, the answer is going to be, well, it depends. Pretty much any time you ask like you want a scientific answer to something, the answer is going to be, well, it depends, because it's almost always more nuanced or complicated. But people don't want complicated. People want, like, can I offer somebody a bigger bonus and then they'll do a thing that I want? I'm like, well, yeah, but people usually stop listening to me after the but
Because they
because
want the
it's
averages.
complicated. Yeah.
Okay,
Um,
so let's stay with this for a minute. Predictive outcomes. That's the big buzzword right now. Let's predict.
Buzzwords.
Let's precog what's going to happen. Let's give them the test. Let's use an algorithmic session to predetermine an individual's behavior before we invest in them as an employee or promote them, based on evolutionary biology and evolutionary psychology, are predictive indexes predictive, or are they just a cool buzzword for today's gotta serve up something different and unique? What's your personal and what's your professional opinion?
Both things that you said are true. Um, so the thing that you hear about that's actually put into practice in the real world, that's a buzzword. Um, do those things exist in reality in the scientific world? Yes, but they don't necessarily look the same. Um,
How
so
so?
if I were, well, because there's always something lost in translation. We sort of talked about this earlier, right? The
Yeah.
idea that if someone who is going to monetize a scientific idea like this, they're going to do it so that it's simple, straightforward, and bang for your buck. This is what's real. Use my thing, not somebody else's. This is what I can do for you. Whereas scientists are going to come up and say, well, yeah, but what you really need to consider is, and it becomes a little more nuanced, a little more complex, with, so to your point, well, can I predict something about this person? Well, yes, you could absolutely predict something about the success of an individual person, but are the predictors that you're using
Hmm.
relevant to this person under these circumstances? We also talked about too, especially when you're talking about elite people, spec ops or your CEOs or whatever. Those are not normal people. They're and I mean that in the best way.
With
They're
respect,
not,
sure, I understand.
with respect, not
I
normal.
gotcha.
um, they're not average, and so statistics, all of this the math behind these predictive algorithms that you're talking about and everything, they're built on averages. They're
Sure.
built on this normal distribution of humanity and the people in the middle, and can we best predict what's going on in the middle? If you really were interested in predicting something about the people at the top of whatever distribution you're interested in looking at, you would need to build the algorithm using data from those people. And that's often not what we see.
Well, it's not. And isn't that what's terrifying? That we're using the middle or the average to determine the course of a fill in the blank team, a mission, an executive leadership group. And so the question that I raise has to do with the standards, the testing standards that are being used, whether it's high school to college, university acceptance, professional advancement. Are those standards pivoting on the mushy middle and not taking into account the outliers that could be where genius and true creativity rests?
Genius and true creativity are a whole different beast right
Okay.
there. So that's a whole different beast. I think that when you're talking about things like, I mean, you brought up schools and things like that. We know those tests don't work. Like we
They
just
don't
know
work in what regard? They don't work for aptitude. They don't work for ability to learn.
they don't actually predict success.
Okay. So are they nefarious? Are they in place just to keep people calm and
Never what's that thing? Never attribute to malice what you can attribute to incompetence. I think it's more something
that's great.
like that.
I haven't heard that
Um,
one, but thank you.
I I think that's probably more what it is that people latch on to something and then it's like I mean any kind of aptitude test, you're getting into. It's like there might have at some point been some kernel of value to it, but it's the same thing that happens when you turn anything that was like oh, it's like the difference between like a tailor-made suit
Yes.
and something that you go to Walmart and pick up off the rack. Both are suits,
Exactly.
but
But they
one was built for you
and
and
fits
the other was
differently.
built for mass consumption. Um, And so they're not the same.
They never are.
Nothing against Walmart suits.
And not taking that way. You're using it as a
Yeah.
standard
They
deviation.
absolutely serve their purpose, but it's a different purpose.
So in behavioral prediction, which is especially in a high stakes environment, which is presumably part of your specialty, what are the key ingredients that are going to be the best indicator of outcome outside of genetics?
That's a big caveat right there.
Oh, I understand.
Um, I think it depends on what outcome you're talking about. So are you talking about financial success? Are you talking about um, notoriety? Are you talking about happiness? Are you talking like what? Because the answer would be different depending on which outcome you're talking about.
Interesting. So in business, it tends to be, unfortunately, more often than not, it's profit, financial gain. But happiness and culture are important ingredients as well. And I ask these questions from an evolutionary perspective, because I'm a big proponent of creating cultures of excellence, not trying to do anything other. I don't know what's right. I don't know what's wrong, but I know that if you're seen, heard, and respected, you'll perform better. And that's nuanced as well, but it creates an environment where everyone ideally can show up as their effortless self. But I also recognize there are standards and there are circumstances that don't allow that. So I'm just keen from your experience working in industry and then in academia, how the science and the practical side interplay. Where's that confluence of here's the connection as it would relate to ethical behaviors?
Oh man, ethical behaviors. Ethical behaviors and money. There's all so many things going on in here at once.
Yeah, I get you.
I would so we know that biology is from the perspective that I come from. Again, biology is at the core of everything. Um, because even just the most basic physiological differences at any given moment can have important effects on behavior. Um, Swear to God, even just like if you have a meeting before lunch or after lunch has a huge influence on things like how people feel about a decision that could aid someone in need.
Interesting.
Versus like, no, just screw them and make money.
Right.
So, and that's just, I mean, that's a blood sugar level thing. And
Sure.
so when we embrace that idea, the idea that just truly basic biological and physiological functioning has effects on all of these behaviors and decisions that we think are no purely intellectually relevant, it gives you a whole different set of variables you have to start considering when thinking about what influences are going to be meaningful, how they're going to influence people. And just maybe as a big sort of step back and say, okay, well, if we're predicting success in these high risk, high reward environments, these elite level performance, be it again, whatever the environment is, that elite level performance. This is one of those times where I'm going to say something that people don't like, but it's true. Not everybody is built to be elite. And so even if you come up with the best predictors in the world, the best motivators in the world, the best, you know, culture in the world, environment in the world, you can't just take anybody and turn them into the tip top most successful everything.
Okay. So the tip of the spear, what you're talking about, carries certain preconditions, some of which are genetic or biological, some of which can be learned, aptitude related. Where does attitude fit into influencing this?
Define attitude for me.
One's mindset and perspective and ability to be plastic to a situation.
It certainly matters. Um, I mean, if you're not motivated to be successful, you're not going to be successful.
But your motivation is going to be to a level of genetic predisposition. I could be
I could
motivated
be
to
as
be a,
motivated. Yeah, I mean, I could be as
yeah,
motivated as I want to be in the NBA, but like, I'm not going to be in the
right,
NBA.
right, right.
You know? So biologically, I am biologically constrained there. Um,
Okay,
so so I think maybe that is some of it.
understood. Let's pivot for a moment. I got another question. Something you shared with me during our intake call that I thought was remarkable and I've been thinking about a lot. And if I misquote you, correct me.
Okay.
You made a comment that free will is not a thing.
Yeah, I
What,
did.
tell me what you meant by that and why.
Most people think that behavior happens in a certain way where you have a thought, you create an intention, you act on that intention, therefore you behave in a certain way. But just based on what we know about biology, that's not how that works. We know that the body starts producing a behavior before a person is consciously aware of even wanting to engage in that behavior. I think the example I told you is that happens to all of us all the time is you sort of look around and all of a sudden you find yourself standing in your kitchen, not knowing why you're there.
I remember
Like,
that. Yeah,
why was I here? Like, what am I doing here? And you sort of have to think your way through, why would I be standing here? What was I doing? How did I get here? Why am I here? Am I thirsty? Am I hungry? Like you're trying to work your way through it. The same way you would if I saw you standing in the kitchen, you're like, why am I here? I'm like, I don't know. Let's go through the process. What were you doing before? Are you thirsty? Are you hungry? I'd be asking you those questions. I am
sure.
asking myself those questions. Um, and that's because our body will just engage in behavior. Now, most of the time, what happens is we sort of come to a realization that, oh yeah, well, totally meant to do that. So it's like our conscious brain catches up and like, nope, meant to do that totally on purpose. That was me. I did that on purpose. Um, but really the conscious awareness of the behavior came after the behavior already started. So if we can agree that behavior is started by just neurons firing, then the thought can't occur before the behavior because the neurons have already been firing to cause the behavior. So we can't have a thought and then act. We act and then have thoughts about it.
So
And so,
your
mhm,
comment that every thought is an afterthought.
yeah, that's what that means.
That's the underpinning that. Okay, so let's talk about sixth sense and a
Well,
flow state.
hang
Okay,
on, because I got to get this in there first, though.
please.
So I'm not saying we don't have control over our behavior, because as I mentioned, we may not have free will, but we do have free won't.
Free won't.
So I can stop a behavior from happening. I may not be able to consciously start a behavior, but once I'm aware of a behavior, I can stop it from happening most of the time. Um, so it's not that we have no control over anything. It's just that we have like inhibitory control over it. So a behavior will happen and then I can stop it most of the time. But there's a difference there between stopping behaviors that already were happening and starting behaviors from scratch. So I'm not saying we don't have any control. I'm just saying that the control that we have over our own behavior isn't quite in the order that people like to think it is. Sorry,
Interesting.
just had to get
No,
that disclaimer out there.
no, this is great. So you can recognize the stimulus and you could say, okay, I usually respond in this manner, but this time I'm going to respond differently. So I love
Sure.
to eat M&Ms, but I shouldn't be eating all that sugar. So I'm not going to keep them in the house. I'm going to change that behavior. I got it. When you think of an athlete that I don't know how I knew to be at the right place at the right time, a defensive end that just knew when to pivot or not, that sixth sense or that flow state, whatever they may call it, the neurons are firing before the brain has been able to process an offensive play on a defensive player's side. Is that, am I tracking you properly?
The brain is absolutely responding. The part of your brain that you're aware of, that you can hear in your head when you have thoughts to yourself, that's like a weeny teeny portion of what your brain does. And so the way I think about it is that once the part of your brain that you're not aware of, that I mean, the part of your brain that like you're not aware of your heart beating. You're not telling your brain to like make your heart beat. You're not telling your brain to inhale, exhale. You're not telling your brain to make sure your guts are doing their job. It's just doing that. And so that's all your brain. Eating M&Ms, just that's also just your brain. Now you can see that and go, oh no, and then stop it. You can do
Right.
that. But when you're talking about like, oh, how did I know defensive end? How do you know where to be on the field? Oh, I just feel it. No, that's your brain doing exactly what it has been trained to do. I did an interesting study with a colleague of mine recently. I think we got it published recently, looking at, we were looking at electrophysiology, so brainwaves
Yes.
of collegiate golfers and looking at putting performance of collegiate golfers. And we identified the same thing that lots of other people have found was that putting performance is tied to, how your brain is actually reacting. But essentially, it's thinking about it gets in the way. When you let the brain just do the thing that you've trained it to do, it does it pretty well.
Wow.
But when you start thinking about doing the thing that you've trained it to do, you get in your own way. It's like pick a sport, whatever it is, pick a task that you have to accomplish in that sport. Like even let's say free throws in basketball. You got a
Hmm.
guy on the line, he's about to shoot a free throw. Imagine if his coach came out at that moment and started giving instructions about don't forget to do this, don't forget to do that, hold your hand like this, don't forget to blah 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 blah. What's going to happen? Is that guy going to make that free throw?
No, it's gonna be
No.
distracted. Yeah.
Of course. Because that during the moment when you're supposed to be doing the thing is not time for training. That's time for doing.
Well, that's the
And
difference between practice and performance.
right. But performance, when people are trying to perform, whatever it is, if it's trying to hit a target on a shooting range, or if it's make a pass or putt, whatever it is, that's the time for performance. But if the performance happens when it's that well trained, the performance happens by the part of your brain that you are not aware of. And if you try to control, if the conscious part of your brain tries to control it at that moment, it's like the coach coming out onto the court mid free throw. Get out of the way. You've done your job before. That was training. This is performance. Get out of my head when it's time to perform. You got to like tell yourself that. Like that conscious part of your brain you're aware of has no business being involved in the performance part. That's the training part.
Muscle memory.
We can call it that.
Okay. So when you take your practice and you go into a corporation as a consultant, how is it you're optimizing the group's performance when you're not able to be there day in and day out and be certain they're practicing properly?
Well, I mean, in the same way that coach isn't there every minute you're practicing, you go home, you do your stuff, right? Coaches often don't do much during the game, or at least they don't have the same kind of impact during a game. It's like I've coached you already. You got to go do the thing now. And it can be hard. One of the reasons it can be particularly hard is because people's own understanding of their own behavior is often not accurate.
We talked about this at length. One's perception of themselves versus how others experience them can be uniquely different.
That is true. But additionally, this is a little bit different. The idea that when you ask me why I engage in a behavior, my answer may not be real.
What do you mean?
My answer to why I engage in a particular behavior may not be the real reason I engage in a behavior. It's it's that whole if you engage in a behavior, whatever it is, and let's say I walk into a room and I see you yelling at somebody.
Okay.
I'm aware of nothing else except I see you yelling at that person. And then somebody asks me, why do you do that? I'm going, I don't know. Well, let's figure it out. I evaluate the circumstance. I look at you, I look at the other person, I see what I can tell from the content or whatever, and I go, okay, well, maybe. And I come up with my best guess for why you did that. We interpret our own behavior in the exact same way. If I yell at somebody, I have to figure out, why did I just yell at that person? Because I'm angry, because I'm whatever, blah, blah, blah. Well, then maybe somebody comes up to me and be like, have you eaten lunch? Because you're kind of grumpy. Like, oh, I yelled at that person because my blood sugar's low. Um, and so even I may say I yelled at that person because they said this and they shouldn't have said this and they were disrespecting me and I had to do this and blah, blah, blah. Really? My blood sugar was low. So the reason that a person gives for their own behavior is their personal experience of it. But that may not match the actual underlying motivation for engaging in that particular behavior in that moment.
Got it. So you go into an environment and you're able to create an objective understanding of the nuances or the circumstances that could be influencing the behavior, which may or may not be fully present for the individual that's exhibiting them or the team. Why is the output not at a certain level or in that matter? Fantastic. I got it.
Yeah, so it's like if I'm looking at a person who's in charge, let's say I've got somebody who's a chair of some committee and they're maybe not making progress that they want or whatever it is, I can look at that and go, why is that person behaving that way? And I can look and be like, and I see this all the time where somebody who's an expert in something is not being recognized for their expertise. And so then they get defensive. And so what happens when a person gets defensive? It's the same thing that happens when a dog gets defensive. They feel backed into a corner, they lash out. The same thing happens with somebody who feels like their job is at risk. They're not being taken seriously. They're going to behave in a certain way. So while somebody else may look and go, they're just kind of a jerk. They're like that. And say, well, no, 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 no. I mean, maybe. But it could also be that, well, if you change how you react to that person, if you change maybe how the environment that they work in, where they feel more respected for what they do bring to the table, maybe they won't lash out so much.
Got it. So in that regard, does visualization, is that a practical tool in helping one, influencing one's behavior and also predicting how one would behave?
I think visualization can absolutely be valuable. I mean, we know it's valuable in sports,
Sure.
absolutely. And so if it's valuable in sports, it can certainly be applied to other settings where you need performance to be at a certain level. I think it absolutely can. I think that there are some nuances to it.
Yeah.
So a lot of people say like manifesting is not that far from visualization, right?
Sure.
Manifesting, just think about what you want, whatever it is. Oh, it's not going to do any good.
Abracadabra.
Yeah, like it's not magic.
Yeah, no, I got you.
It's in, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
Now, are there ways that you could leverage something that is like visualization for how to prepare yourself to behave in a certain way under certain circumstances? Sure, absolutely. But again, it's got to be specific. It's got to be meaningful to the person. And what's meaningful to one person may not be meaningful to another person. And sorry, that reminded me of something very, what's meaningful to one person is not going to be meaningful to another. And that's really, really hard to get some people to understand. I'm going to ask you a question that seems a little bit out of left field.
Please.
Are you a happy person?
Most of the time.
Okay. There are some people who are just genuinely happy people. And for those people, gratitude, the embracing gratitude, all that embracing gratitude and whatever, that really works, which is great. I am not a happy person. Happiness does not work for me. So gratitude does not work for me. So if if I were just coming into a place and I'm saying, everybody here, we know gratitude works, and so here we need you to keep your gratitude journals and blah, 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 that may really work for you, but it's going to be detrimental to me.
I'm curious about something.
Okay.
Has there been have you experienced a lot of trauma? And I asked, well, let me explain. Let me explain. Well, if you're not happy, then my mind says, then you're sad.
No.
And you don't impress me as a sad person. And you do impress me as an optimistic and altruistic individual. So I'm curious why you would classify yourself as not happy.
The opposite of happiness is not sadness. Like, if I'm not happy, that doesn't mean I'm sad. I just don't experience that thing. It's not that I'm miserable. It's just I don't have whatever that like prone to happiness thing is. I don't have it.
Is happiness joy or joyfulness?
They're related, but they're not necessarily the same emotional state under the same kinds of circumstances.
So does that mean you're ambiguous in the sense of, emotionally, you're not happy, you're not sad, but you're
My
ambivalent?
my interaction with the world is typically based on things other than my emotional state.
Hence the science?
Um, yeah.
Interesting.
I think that's
No,
what I think it makes me it's one of the things that helps me enjoy the work that I do,
sure.
because it's what my mother used to always say, like, find a job that uses your neuroses to your advantage. Um, that's-
God, that's
so
hilarious.
so yeah, that there's that. Um, but see, that's the thing, and that's really important because people who are happy don't understand people who aren't. Like people who aren't just
Mm.
like happiness motivated, it's like, well, how do we get you happy? It's like, no, no, that's not a goal for me. Like, like happiness is not a daily goal for me
Is
for whatever
happiness
reason.
an outlook or a chemical composition?
Both,
Both.
depending on your level of analysis. So it is the result of a series of chemical reactions. But it's an interaction of those chemical reactions and your interpretation of the environment that you're in and that internal state. And some of us are more prone to that and others aren't.
Okay, so
Um,
let me ask a completely out of the park question, but maybe on point. So someone that's naturally happy but has trauma and then has PTSD, what is something like ibogaine or something in the nature of a psilocybin or one of the organics do that allows them to move beyond this state of, I call it ambiguity, but maybe it's ambivalence or sadness, and reemerge, reblossom into this state of happiness from a behavioralist point of view?
so um yeah, the my neuroscientist wife is probably very, very much the person to talk about the psilocybin stuff. Um
I
I
did
I
speak to her about that, by the way.
I'm sure
So
you
separate.
did. I'm sure you did. So resetting your biochemistry can affect lots of things. Um, and I think we don't have enough information about those particular biochemical reactions at this point to determine the value that they have for different people. I mean, even just we know like certain whatever drugs a person feels like taking, they don't affect all of us in the same way. So it's like people who have ADHD, right? You put them on Ritalin and they become calm and functional. But somebody who doesn't have ADHD, you give them Ritalin and you've just given them a microdose of meth. And so they act like it. And so there are individual differences in what is your biochemistry and what happens to your biochemistry when you are given this drug, whatever it may be. It's going to have a different result. That's one of
So
the things. Yeah.
yeah, so the question that I have gets back to a topic we were talking about earlier, which is genetics.
Mhm.
How can you alter one's biochemistry to override a a behavioral predisposition?
In the same way you can change any kind of, you don't even need drugs to do it. Just a reward punishment system is enough to
Mm-hmm.
do a lot to change everything. I mean, I don't know what this is sort of how I started with one of my conversations with you, but it's like the world gets a whole lot different to understand when you start embracing the fact that humans are another animal in the animal kingdom.
Interesting.
So if I were to ask you, I don't know if you've got a dog or you ever spend any
I
time
do.
around dogs or anything like that.
Yep.
Okay. If you wanted to change your dog's behavior, what are you going to do?
Give her a treat. Boom.
We're the same. You want to change my behavior? Give me a treat. like, it's not that hard. Like, we really are that simple, right? Reward the behavior that we want to see more of. We can punish the behavior we want to see less of, but we just know punishment doesn't work nearly as well as reward. We just know that from all of our research shows us that punishment only really works well under some very specific circumstances for long-term change. What really creates lasting long-term change is those reward systems, variable reward, right? So don't give me a treat every time.
Oh.
Give me a treat sometimes, and
Oh.
don't let me know when.
Oh,
And then
wow.
sometimes it's going to be a little treat, and sometimes it's going to be a big treat.
So the selective nature of how you're applying it's more important than the consistency of doing it?
Consistency actually works against you. 'Cause think about
How
it this
so?
way. Think
Yes.
about it this way. If every time we usually talk about it in terms of gambling. So, like, let's say there's a slot machine. I go up, I pull the handle for their slot machine. I win $5. Oh, that's amazing. I pull it again. I win $5. Oh my God, that's crazy. I pull it again. I win $5. That's amazing. I do it 10 times. I win $5 every time. I pull it the 11th time. No $5. What am I going to do?
Go to the next machine.
Yeah, I'm going to walk away.
Yeah, because you're sensitized to it.
Right. Because I was expecting this one specific thing every time. The first time it doesn't happen, I guess that's over. But that's not how gambling really works. Sometimes you get nothing. Sometimes you get $1. Sometimes you get $1,000,000. So you keep pulling that lever because you never know what's going to happen and it might be huge. And so we're going to keep doing that. So by having that variable reinforcement, then you're going to create a behavior that is more resistant to stopping.
I never thought of it that way. So let's take social media, for example. And I'm reading so much about how social media is pre-programmed to make us addicted. What is it
Yes.
about the social media that's changing the behavior and the biochemistry of an individual that's participating?
It is, it's essentially, social media is essentially pulling that handle and getting $5 every time.
How?
Little hits of dopamine. Ooh, novel information, novel information, novel information, novel information, novel information, novel information. Every time I scroll, I get new novel information.
And it's the
And so,
novelty of the information that's creating the dopamine?
yeah, novelty is like a big thing because it's like, what's happening? And then, ooh, what's happening? Ooh, what's happening? It's like a new thing every time. It's a new little treat. Now it's teeny weeny. It's not like a big deal. It's like not even an M&M's worth of reward. But it's so consistent and it's so available and it never stops that no matter how much I keep scrolling, there's always going to be more. It never runs out.
And this is science backed. This isn't supposition. This is
No,
a
I don't want to say this isn't even science, but this is just an understanding of how physiology works.
wow.
Um,
Got it.
so yeah, this is just, I mean, imagine if like you're scrolling on whatever your preferred social media is, and all of a sudden the same thing keeps showing up. I'm not going to keep doing that. It's the same
No.
thing. I already know this. I
Change the
don't
channel.
care.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hit a reset.
Um, mhm.
Remarkable. So let's take this conversation and apply it to your expertise in both science and in education. As you're looking forward to whatever that next big step may be, how do you see yourself applying yourself, and what do you hope the desired outcome is of that next chapter that you're embarking on?
I would love to just be able to make the point that if you let us apply science to whatever problem you have, we can help. Um, we understand what behavior really is motivated by, which may not fit with whatever you think your behavior is motivated by. And it just being able to do that, which from my perspective seems like a simple thing. It's just saying, well, let's understand where the behavior actually comes from, and then we can mold it.
Mm.
That I am a compulsive problem solver. So if you ask me where I want to be, what I want to be doing is just solving problems. And it almost doesn't matter to me what that problem is. I just have to solve problems. I want to solve it. It creates a value to me to be able to solve a problem that did not have a solution before. I mean, that's why I went into science, right? I want to solve problems. And so for me, just selfishly, being able to find problems that I know how to solve is interesting to me. Um,
And
it's
are
it's
you are
inter-
you are you agnostic to the sector or the marketplace of those problems? Are you more lab driven, where you want to generate science and new learning and understanding there, or are you more motivated by going commercial? I want to solve the problem of greater ticket sales or world hunger or epidemiology issues. Where is the motivation for you today? I know that can change tomorrow,
I
as it can with
have
any of us. Yeah, I'm
sure.
sorry.
No, I have the benefit. I have some amazing colleagues still that are still working in labs, and so I still get to do research. I still get to do the science thanks to them, and my collaborations with them. So I do get to do that, and that does drive me and motivate me. But being able to see how I can apply that information really to a wide range of things. I have a good fortune of working with a lawyer, doing some consulting with a lawyer who I like to think I can help. I've been helping build cases in support of people who need help, and are trying to, from a perspective I understand, fight what is an injustice. And that makes me just feel good as a person who cares about justice in the world.
Yes,
So that I like. If I could find a way to cure world hunger, I would absolutely do it.
of course.
Um, but just as an intellectual exercise, I also am quite interested in being able to solve the problem of ticket sales. Because from my perspective, the problems are the same. It's just a matter of where you want to apply what problem you want to apply this particular problem solving technique to.
I see you being immensely valuable. You bring in a advanced understanding of statistics, a deep understanding of evolution from a humanist perspective. So you got the science and you got the humanism, the humanitarianism as well, which is kind of an interesting blend. And then you have obviously the psychology that goes into the motivations of behaviors. What, as we come up to the top of the hour, to that point, what is SciPrac Solutions, and what is that consulting firm set up to do?
Just the stuff that we're talking about is really trying to bring science to practice. And whatever that practice might be, if it's sports, if it's C-suite decision making, if it's culture of a business that's maybe needing a little bit of a tweak. I said law. We've been working, with a lawyer on some of those things. So really that it's bringing the science that we understand to whatever the practice is that needs it. and biomedical, we've got a little bit of work with a biotech company. And so it's really that. I mean, yeah, I don't know how
No,
else to.
I understand. So you're bringing deep applied scientific solutions to a variety of different constraints, whether they be not for profit, whether they be first
Sure.
responders, whether they be military, corporate governance, community engagement. And whether it makes people comfortable or uncomfortable, you're agnostic because you're a scientist. So you're looking at the data and making informed data based decisions. So the data driven decision making is really elevated. And you're not bending the data to prove a point, which we've seen numbers bent to prove all different points. That's remarkable. So let me ask this question. If someone listening in our audience would like to get in touch with you for a speaking engagement, a
Mhm.
consultation, an offsite, how would one go about doing that?
So we do have our website, cyprac.com. And so we've got that, and we've got all our contact information. There's some information about me and the people I work with on there, and just some basic explanations of the kind of work that we have done. We also do program evaluation and things like that because it's all part of the same underlying mechanisms. So that's I think the best way.
I recognize you as an educator and a scientist. I know you to have consulted for professional teams and generals and operators and just students looking to improve education and their contributions to society. This has been an absolute pleasure. I could speak to you for hours. Every time I engage with you, I learn something different about myself and my behavior, which is, as a fully formed adult, a little scary sometimes, but something I relish. You're simply amazing. Um, I know you don't chase headlines. I know that you do chase the truth. I know that you question things from the inside out, where most of us won't take the time to examine it at the level of detail that you do. So I'm grateful for that. If this conversation was insightful, enlightening, engaging, please take a moment, visit SciPrac, SCIPRAC Solutions. Dr. Starratt, you've been exceptional, friends, family, and cohorts. I hope you've enjoyed this engagement. This is the Fight or Flight podcast. I'm Myles, and thank you again for listening.